On this episode of the Doctors Who podcast, we are covering chapters 7 and 8 of Robert Jordan's Eye of the World. Rand arrives in a chaotic Emonds Field, pulling his dying father past piles of rubble where buildings had just stood. He is met by Master Luhan, who explains Trollocs are to blame. Luhan flags Egwene and Nynaeve, the wisdom who is unable to alleviate Tom's enigmatic fever. Desperate, Rand takes his father to the mayor. It is here that Bran al'Vere reveals the town's mysterious strangers, Lan and Moraine, are in fact Warder and Aes Sedai, and that Aes Sedai have the ability to heal beyond the conventional knowledge and power of the wisdom. After Moraine exerts her abilities to save Tam, she warns Rand that unless he, the target of the Trolloc attack, leaves, he will be endangering himself and the town. The only safe place for Rand, Mat, and Perrin will be Tar Valon. Rand is reluctant, but stays by his recovering father's side and falls asleep. A lot happens in these chapters, so let's get to it.
Hello and welcome to the Doctors Who podcast. My name is Chris.
I'm Chip.
And I'm Brian.
So, you're a little crooked, Brian. I'm going to fix you real quick, because that's just how we roll. There you go. You're all better.
Oh, that feels much better.
Chip, I'm going to straighten you out a little bit, too.
Appreciate that.
All right. Now we're pretty. Now we can continue. Okay. So, Eye of the World, chapters 7 and 8. Before we dig into some details, Chip, why don't you tell us what you liked?
All right, so I really like how chapter 7 kind of mirrors chapter 1. So chapter 1, Rand first arrives in Emonds Field, or the first time we see him arrive. He's excited, it's festival time, he's kind of meeting his own old friends. We kind of get to see the village through his eyes, meet a number of the key players. We go to the Wine Spring Inn, we kind of get a feeling for what Emonds Field is like. But now, just 6 chapters later, we kind of flip the script, and Rand again arrives in Emonds Field, but this time, things are very different. Things are burning, there's buildings that are toppled, there's, just wreckage and carnage from the Trolloc attack. So we see many of the same places that we saw in the first chapter, like the Wine Spring Inn, and many of the same characters, but the mood and situation is very, very different now. So I kind of like the way that those two mirror each other. It's also revealed for the first time overtly that Moraine is an Aes Sedai. So it's something I think we've suspected, but hadn't actually, or Jordan hadn't actually revealed that yet. The villagers see her as a dark friend. They're very wary of her. They're very suspicious. They even go so far as to paint a dragon fang on the door of the Wine Spring Inn. But Rand, after taking his father to Nynaeve, the wisdom, to see if she could heal him, and she turned him down, he's pretty quick to seek Moraine's help in seeing if she can heal Tam. So, he doesn't seem to think the same way the villagers do, that he's open to, ideas or, other ways of thought. So, she agrees, and she goes to help. And it's curious that Marilyn refuses to stay in the room when she's healing Tam. So it's interesting knowing that they've had that icy kind of interaction earlier, and now, we kind of see this wariness of Tom around the Aes Sedai again. So we know that there's got to be some sort of a history with Tom and the Aes Sedai, and, there's something more there. We also learn kind of during the healing chapter that the Trolloc attack wasn't random, and that certain homes and certain people were targeted. Apparently they targeted 3 boys, all of a similar age, and we know that now to be Rand, Mat, and Perrin. Moraine tells Rand that he needs to leave the 2 rivers, that the Trollocs will come back as long as he's there, and that to seek the answers to the questions that he has, he won't find those answers in the 2 rivers. He needs to leave, and she suggests they leave and head for Tar Valon. So there's a lot going on in these chapters and a lot of setup for, a lot of plotting for what's going to happen as we continue this adventure.
I agree. I think there was a lot that really worked well here. I really like the impetus to leave this small town. I mean, for so long, this has been kind of presented as the only world that Rand has ever known and all of his friends have ever known and grown up in. And this chapter, or these two chapters, illustrate how much of the world there is beyond their own front door. And all of these things, like at one point, Lady Moraine says something about we haven't seen this many Trollocs since the Trolloc War of such and such date. And it's like all of these things which are clearly well known outside this town, but time has kind of stood still everywhere else within the borders of the two rivers. So I like that kind of world building where we're probably going to see more of this like small town boy, big town city feel. And I'm wondering, that the course has been set. They're looking to go out to Tar Valon, but what's going to happen? And they've really set this up well that we know there are Trollocs out and about. That there's a lot of unknown and danger in the coming chapters. It feels like kind of a mini ramp up to something coming. So I kind of got into it.
So what I was noticing when I was reading through these sections is we're starting to diverge from the familiarity of like this Tolkien-esque world, right? So things are starting to kind of branch away from that familiar feel. But at the same time, we also have some parallels. We've got when Rand was carrying Tam through the woods all night, right? Like
Westwood.
they had to like get off the road because the Fade, the Halfman, the Myrddraal, whatever you want to call it, was there. That that kind of echoed back to the Nazgul finding the hobbits on the road, and then you have excuse me, you have like the impetus to leave, right? And it's not quite the same, but it's still like the main character, whether it's Frodo or whether it is Rand, they're faced with this and they're like, oh, okay, I've got to do it, I've got to go. So I liked kind of still seeing some of those parallels, even though I feel like Tolkien is here and all of a sudden, Jordan's going this way, while Tolkien goes that way as we start to really develop more of the world. So, yeah.
I think it's interesting too that in Tolkien there was an obvious quest that Frodo was put upon. That he's going to bear this ring and take it, at first to Rivendell to see what to do with it. But there's really no quest or reason to leave other than they can't stay. The Trollocs are going to come back if they stay, but they don't really know where to go other than Tar Valon is where Moraine wants to take them to get answers. But we don't really know why or what the importance of these characters are just yet.
Yeah, and they've still kind of steeped. I say they, I mean Robert Jordan has kind of steeped the Aes Sedai in mystery. There's a whole lot of mistrust and like misunderstanding around them, and I think I mentioned this a while back that the small village feel almost seemed a little tropey, and like some of this is just like it feels a little forced. It's like, oh well, Aes Sedai are the Dark Friends, and that's another thing. It's like so like Dark Friends, like men and women who serve the dark one, and like Harry Potter Potter has the Death Eaters, so it's like we've got these clever names for
Sith.
Yeah, so I don't know, I just the terminology is kind of weird. Takes some getting used to, but I lost my train of thought, so somebody jump in, please.
Yeah, I really was intrigued in these chapters, and it kind of brought to light the question of, again, why were Lan and Moraine in the town to begin with? I mean, let's not let's not just pretend that they're there on accident. Like, I feel like this was sort of planned.
Vacationing.
Um, right? Uh, I mean, they did talk about how beautiful everything was along the river, and it's
Hmm.
like, all right, obviously it's very pristine, but what really drew them to this spot? Like, why are they here? And we don't
You'll
really
have
get
to
an
read
answer, at least.
you'll have to read New Spring to figure out why they were there.
Ah, and that's the prequel, if I
It
remember right.
is.
That
Right?
is, yes.
So,
Cool.
one of the things Robert Jordan always used to say to fans when they would ask questions is he would always say, read and find out. And online, it was always abbreviated to RAFO. So, if you ever see RAFO out there on the internet, that's where that came from. And I thought
Ah.
that's what Chip was going to tell you. Read and find out, Brian.
Oh,
Read and find out.
read an F off. It's not
Well,
read an F off.
yeah,
Wait. Oh.
if you had said RAFO to me, I probably would have assumed that was. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
No,
But
but we don't get a lot of details
in
in
this
this book as to why they were there until did I remember. So I think you find out some stuff later. Some pieces kind of start to fill in when they get to Tarvalin, but yeah, she was following some clues if I remember right from Spring that kind of led her to believe that this was an area she needed to be in.
and I don't want to be that guy because I don't think what they did was right, but I totally saw the justification from a lot of like the mob who was there at the end. They were like, "These strangers in the town brought this upon us all. We're all doomed as long as they're in town." So like they had their pitchforks,
Yep.
and then they call one of them out. They're like, "Uh, yeah,
It was kind of very much like Frankenstein's monster type thing,
it
with
was."
the
Yeah,
torches and
yeah.
pitchforks and
One of the
this mob mentality,
things that we
or like our politics today.
right, yeah. Um, one of the things that we start to find out, about the time when Moraine is healing Tam is we get some interesting interactions between Rand and Lan. He notices.
Yeah, this is Land starts to emerge some more in these
Yeah.
chapters.
He notices the sword, and he's like, "Does that have a heron on it by chance? What's a heron marked blade doing on
Here.
in the middle of nowhere?" And this is where I think the reader finds out that a heron marked blade means that you're a master swordsman. You get a heron when you're really really good. And then Rand asks, he's like, "Well, if we had told you that we saw this cloaked rider, that the wind didn't blow his cloak, would you have known, and would you have been able to do something if we had told you sooner?" And Land's like, "Well, it wouldn't have hurt." but yeah, we start to see like almost some grudging respect when Rand mentions the Trolloc that talked to him and how he killed it. It's like, oh, interesting. So I really like Lan as a character, so these early moments are fun for me.
Yeah.
I really like this particular dialogue. I kind of got the feel like, if anyone has ever had like family and surgery and you're there like waiting with other people in the waiting room, you're just like, all right, well, they get out of surgery here in 10 minutes. So like, let's just make small chat with the guy sitting next to me. This is exactly what it felt like. It like started off as very much like, "Oh, what brings you here? Is that a heron on your, oh, there is a heron on," like they really started kind of hitting it off. And I thought that was a really good character relationship defining moment.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of like how these set of chapters are kind of the springboard for the book. I mean, everything prior to this has really just been establishing backstory, letting you see some of the characters you're going to be following in what they do in their normal lives. So this feels, I mean, like this is like the jumping board that takes them and propels them off and away and turns everything that they know upside down. So it's gonna get fun, I think.
And if I can touch on one more thing, at least from my notes, I didn't mention this in the intro, but I really liked, and I think it's going to be important, the Angreal.
Yes.
I think that's something that Jordan seems to really live in the details, and I feel like he went into a lot of detail on this particular talisman, and I don't know anything about it. Like, quite literally, I know nothing about this other than it looks like maybe a kind of a woman like a woman with long hair and a cloak or something. Like,
it was like a little ivory figurine, wasn't it?
Yeah, made out of ivory, and I don't know
But
anything.
it's old. The way he described it, it was something very old because the ivory had been browned over time, and it was just, it's something ancient even.
Yeah.
So I get the feeling as a first-time reader that this might come up somewhere down the line.
Well, I guess we'll have to read and find out.
Good job, Chris.
Wah.
You may be onto something.
Yeah.
But
All right, guys. Do we need to hit on anything else, or? Oh, one thing.
well, we didn't really.
I was gonna
Go
say
ahead.
one thing, like, when Rand comes into the village carrying Tam, and he realizes that he's been like dragging his father all night through the woods off of the main road. It's like you just have to like recognize the weariness, and you also have to probably assume that there's some adrenaline and some shock going on, like as he's encountering people as he walks into the village, and he's just kind of like, you're like, oh yeah, he's in shock. He is in shock, and he's probably jacked up on adrenaline, or it's starting to come down and he's going to crash soon. But just like those little details that get mentioned without him specifically saying, hey, he's in shock. I think it probably harkens back to some of his military and combat experience, because he would have either seen or experienced things like that quite a bit.
Agreed.
Did you have something else, Chip?
No, I didn't.
Well, okay then.
Thinking on things.
In that case, next time we will be covering chapters 9 and 10. And our new episodes drop every Thursday. So please, if you like what you've heard, we invite you to click the like button, that little thumbs up guy. We also would love for you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that when we do drop new content, you are notified. And then we also love it when you get down into the comments and you engage in the discussion with us. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, what drove you absolutely crazy, because no bright-minded character would ever behave this way, he says as he crosses his arms under his breast. So,
Read and find out.
Read and find out. So, next week, we look forward to seeing you. Thank you for joining us, and until then...
Allons-y.